I'm always a bit skeptical when YouTubers veer out of their lane. It just doesn't have a history of working out well. So when Canadian YouTuber Just Rain made a dramedy, I wasn't so sure, and boy, was I wrong. Late Bloomer is on its second season, and it's just one of the best things on TV right now. The group chat has some thoughts. Let's go. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. So, Late Bloomer is a dramedy TV series on Crave that centers on Jasmeet Dutta. Jasmeet might be a familiar face. He's played by Canadian YouTuber Just Rain. It's a fun and honest look at Sikh millennial experience in Canada. Season 2 of Late Bloomer just wrapped up. I'm hearing friends talk about it and how it's so much better than the first season, which honestly, like the first season, I had a great time watching that. Jeevan Sangha is here. Joyita Sengupta is here. They've both seen it. They're here with me now. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Nice to have you here. Listen, Joyita, I'm going to start with you. Season 2, Late Bloomer, being called the best one yet. How'd you feel about it?
I really liked it.
Okay,
I loved the first season as well. I think the second season is even more ambitious than the first. And it really leans into, I guess, the drama side of the dramedy equation, although there are some really funny moments.
Yeah.
But I think probably one of my favorite things about Late Bloomer, and specifically season 2, is in the canon of North American shows about South Asians, there's often, in my opinion, a huge lack of class representation. I always feel like I keep seeing the same stories about an upper middle class, brown person who's maybe their parents are a doctor or something and they want to go to an Ivy League school and blah, blah, blah. And they're made by great trailblazing creators for sure. And they sometimes center whiteness in a way that I don't appreciate.
Yeah.
But it does speak to some people's experiences. But when it comes to Late Bloomer, you get to see a community that truly doesn't need to center anyone else but themselves. And in terms of the class part of that equation, you see Jasmeet, the first season ended with him falling out with his parents, mainly his dad. And now it starts with him sort of living in a basement apartment with a bunch of international students. And there's a bit of tension there because those students are looking at him you could just go home if you wanted to. And you keep rocking the boat because you don't know struggle like we do. Yeah. But then on the other hand, he's hanging out with his girlfriend who comes from a far more privileged and wealthier family. And there's a lot of discomfort around that and how they sort of move through the world as South Asians. And I just think seeing that breadth of our experience from a class perspective, so refreshing.
I want to come back to that idea that this is a show that does not center whiteness in the ways that other shows that sort of talk about and feature the South Asian community tend to, because I think that's an important aspect of this conversation. But Jeevan, let me ask you, last season, we talked about how Jasmeet was kind of wholeheartedly beginning to commit himself to the YouTube channel, moves out of his parents' place, and he falls in love. What's he up to this season? Just plot-wise, what's going on?
Yeah, Joyita set the scene really well. He's, moved out. He's reckoning with some of the decisions and the events of the season finale in season 1. And I think one thing, amongst many things, figuring out what his relationship to his family can and should look like, but also so many other people, he's in this constant state of questioning, what does my religion mean to me? What does my identity mean to me? If I had full choice over what I wanted to do right now in this moment, what does that look like? And as someone who also is sort of monetizing parts of his identity through his career, he's figuring out how far am I willing to go, but how far do I want to go for a check? And exploring some of the tensions within, diaspora art and kind of some of the funny corniness of a millennial diaspora art, while also acknowledging the fact that he is in a way a part of that world.
I think the idea of trying to sort of engage with those questions while also understanding yourself to be hang on, I'm actually at the center of how other people are asking those questions to themselves. That's a really interesting dynamic to play out. Joyita, there's an episode of season 2 that you really want to talk about. It's called New Canadian. It centers on the day and the life of an international student making sort of ends meet as a food delivery biker. Here's an exchange between the student and his friends as he sort of practices his English to help getting a job.
Hello, I'm a business student and I'm looking for an opportunity to gain practical experience.
In Canadian accent, you got emphasis on the R's. Say opportunity. Opportunity.
Opportunity.
Opportunity.
Opportunity.
More hip hop, like opportunity.
Opportunity?
Yeah.
Opportunity?
Yeah. Opportunity.
Oh, इतना नहीं मिलनी तुम नौकरी. Stop wasting time and focus on making more deliveries.
Okay, that's from season 2, Late Bloomer. Listen, you want to talk about the class elements of this season. What'd you love about that episode specifically?
It's funny because, like, you know, you do all this work as a journalist sometimes, and you go out and you talk to a bunch of international students, and you look at the immigration system and the flaws and what they're dealing with, and you put out a very carefully crafted front burner episode. Yeah. But then you watch an episode of a TV show, and you're like, well, that did it better.
Hey, tell me about this.
So it's first of all, this is also a perfect example of how ambitious this season is in terms of, like, you know, we're going to take a departure from this main character that you're following. We're not going to show you, like, for the majority of the episode, any of the other characters that you've come to know. We're going to follow this guy who's a delivery driver, like basically like an Uber Eats delivery person, who's also an international student, who's also living in overcrowded housing. You know, he's got a girlfriend back home that he, like, tries to talk to on the phone as much as possible. He's struggling to make ends meet. He's using a regular bicycle and not an e-bike, so he's, like, really, like, the deliveries are not getting to where they need to be, I guess, fast enough to, like, really keep up with the gig economy standard that's been set. And what it does is it addresses so many different issues that we are seeing, you know, covered in the news by other journalists and discussed online. Sometimes it's discussed very unkindly, but you're seeing it in such a beautifully crafted story, and it's humanizing, you know, the experiences of people that we interact with all the time. But this is a group of people that are often talked about.
They're visible.
You don't talk. People don't talk to them. Yeah. You don't hear from them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's an opportunity to, like, get an understanding of, like, what a day in the life of that person is like. And in a lot of cases, it's really hard.
I mean, you mentioned the idea of this particular group of people being talked about. Last week, you were on this very show talking about anti-Asian and anti-immigrant sentiments being aimed at Brampton, Ontario, specifically South Asian communities, being stoked by places like Six Buzz. What does a show like Late Bloomer offer to that conversation, do you think?
Well, it allows us to have a counterpoint, right? Like, when you don't hear from people, it's so easy to make assumptions about what it is that they're doing. This idea that, like, you know, they came here to sort of take advantage of the system, to scam, to, like, oh, they don't need to be here. But when you see the sort of dire straits that people are living in order to make it here, and you, like I said, allow them to actually be humanized, it's a counterpoint, it's a counter argument. Do I think that every single troll in the Six Buzz comments is now going on Late Bloomer, watching episode 6 and thinking, wow, this changed my mind? No, but it allows there to be balance in this broader conversation that we're having.
Yeah, the important thing is to create the space and sort of hope that, you know, some people sort of invite themselves to it. Jeevan, what do you make of what Joyita is saying there?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think this episode of Late Bloomer to me is like required reading for everyone in my life. I think that, like Joyita mentioned, like there are so many conversations about international students, about newcomers that are so vitriolic and so aggressive. Like, one scene in that episode that I found, it was very quick but really important, is just after having like the worst day ever, the protagonist of this episode opens his phone and sees like a video that he thinks is fun, and then scrolls about like folks that are just like him and opens the comments, and it's just like some of the most troubling and disgusting comments that you could ever see. And like any racialized person in Canada, but particularly like South Asians in the last few years, know that feeling of seeing something on Instagram about someone in your community and just having to brace for impact. And I think the level of complexity that this episode brings to the international student experience and presents to Canadians through the extensive research that was done is so needed in this cultural moment in time. It is like urgent to me. So if you haven't watched it, please consider it.
I want to go back to the thing that Joyita mentioned earlier, which is the idea of this being a show that's created kind of outside of the context of the white gaze. Jeevan, when you think about the show and the audience that Late Bloomer is trying to reach and trying to sort of speak directly to, do you watch the show and say, this is a show that is specifically trying to speak to us and maybe welcome other people should they be interested in engaging with this? Or is it trying to be a wider appeal show? Or is Just Ray not at all in the business of doing that in the show?
I think a part of what makes me feel like it's for us, but also for everyone, is how the range of diversity within the South Asian community is also reflected. Like he makes really interesting choices that we don't really see in a lot of other shows, where I think some of those shows that Joyita was talking about before, which are like really centered on like upper middle class families, they can be very monolithic at times. Like they're great and they provide value, but also in a show like Late Bloomer, like he makes the choice to stay true to his experience by keeping his mom's character Kashmiri Punjabi and not, the same as every other show that we've seen in the past. He has a cousin who is half white and who's also grappling with his relationship to his identity. His best friend's Tamil. Like he's trying to create a world that feels so true to his experience. And because of that, it feels true to my experience and to so many other people's experiences, because that's what real communities look like. They look like lots of different people from diverse backgrounds. Even if we all share this sort of like broad umbrella term of South Asian, there are all these smaller and not smaller, but like these are all these more nuanced experiences within that umbrella that are represented as well, which makes it feel so much more authentic and not centering the white gaze.
I mean, and that's the magic of a show like this one, is like the more specific you get, somehow the more universal you actually are able to create a show. Yeah. So when you think about the ways that Late Bloomer is sort of striking a chord and try to imagine a future for the show, sort of a season 3, where would you like to see it go?
I think I'd like to see it go back home. Like in terms of the shows that I can sort of most relate back to Late Bloomer as like examples of similar ones, like Rami, Mo. Some of the most impressive and powerful episodes were ones where like they went back to their family's homeland.
Yes.
Like in Rami, they go to Egypt. In Mo, they go to the West Bank.
They do.
I think as Jasmeet as a character continues to sort of grapple with like his tensions with his family and his identity, I think a lot of diaspora kids from all around the world can sort of talk about, like, can probably speak to like the complex but also like anchoring feeling that you can get when you visit your family back home. And I could totally like see that being the next step in terms of like reconcile. Maybe it's like one of the steps to like reconciling with his family is like going and visiting in Punjab, but then also giving this show the opportunity to shoot, in Punjab would be incredible.
I can just imagine the idea of like, okay, if you could get this show make it more and more ambitious, that's exactly the sort of like scale and ambition that you'd like to get for this. Jeevan, what about you? Where would you like to see the show go?
I mean, I would love to see it go to Punjab. That would be so awesome. I also think a storyline that I have been really enjoying is the character of Jasmeet's sister Manvi. Kind of watching her grapple with her relationship to ideals. Her character isn't centered in a lot of episodes, but every time we pan to her, it always feels so authentic. It's like an experience I've experienced, or so many other people have experienced, just in the way that young Punjabi girls are spoken to or are sometimes brushed aside in conversation around their brothers. And so I think I would love to see her relationship to her identity be explored more, perhaps in Punjab, perhaps elsewhere, as she comes into herself and starts to step into her own autonomy. I would love to see that explored more in season 3.
Just Rain, if you're listening, dude, this is the time. Okay, I got to say thank you to both of you for being here. This has been a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Of course, anytime. Thank you so much. Jeevan Sangha is a freelance culture writer and editor at Shadow Mag. She was in Surrey, BC. Joyita Sengupta is a producer right here at CBC News. She was in Toronto. You can catch season 2 of Late Bloomer right now on Crave. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. You're hearing new music from Polaris Award-winning artist Lido Pimienta. This song is called El Dembo del Tiempo. It is off Lido's latest album, Belleza, which dropped last week. Gloria Malone is a Lido fan. She spent this past weekend listening to the new album. She's right here with me to talk about the songs that stood out for her. Gloria, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Listen, we just played a little bit of El Dembo del Tiempo, which is one of your picks off this new album. What'd you like about that one?
Yeah, so I started listening to the album, and every time I listen to an album, I start from the first song all the way through.
Nice.
And so I saw the list of like the titles of the song, and as a Dominican, it sounds very basic, but I was like, oh, dembo, I wonder what that's going to sound like. And so as I'm listening to the album and then I get to this song, El Dembo del Tiempo, it's totally different than what I expected. And then I also love like halfway through the song, it completely changes like the tempo. So that's why I chose this song. And it also, when I went back and listened to the album a second time, it almost feels like a transitional song in the story that the album is painting.
I gotta say, like, Lido's had this incredibly storied career of all these sort of pivots in her career. She's won a Polaris Award here in Canada. Gloria, how did she first come on your radar?
So I first heard about Lido from a fellow Afro-Dominicana, Zahira Kelly, who is an artist herself, and she kind of was posting about her and posting about Lido's work. And then we actually went to a Lido concert here in New York City together. And it was really dope to be in the space and hearing Lido live. I feel it's a very different experience of hearing an artist live. And her voice is so ethereal, and just having it kind of fill up the space and like feeling her voice was super amazing. And it reminded me a lot of a fellow Afro-Indigenous woman from the country that we know as Colombia, Toto La Momposina, who was kind of credited with saving the genre of cumbia, which was created on the coastal regions by Afro-Indigenous communities in Colombia and in other regions of South America. So it's kind of like Lido is carrying that torch through her work.
I love that description of Lido's voice, because she truly does have one of those voices that sort of like occupies a room so fully that you kind of have to like fully step into it. We're going to play another song. Here's another one of your picks. This one is called Quiero que me bese. Take a listen. That is Quiero que me bese from Lido's new album, Lido Pimienta's new album. This is an album with a lot of classical sensibilities, Gloria, that it has a lot of big sort of orchestra sounds. She's kind of talked about, what she's trying to do with her music, which is to say, quote, reinvent, rediscover, or present the Caribbean as sublime, not as exotic, unquote. As an Afro-Caribbean person yourself, when you think about Lido and this sort of sonic universe that she's created in this album, how do you feel about it? How does it sort of hit you?
I literally felt like I was sitting in a rainforest listening to an orchestra. And so it was just really dope to, again, be like her voice and how this album is like composed. It just really feels like you're in this world of like this sonic experience, but in this setting that you wouldn't necessarily equate with like classical music and things like that. And I love that Lido is just plays in her art, period, I feel, but also we think of classical music as something that's very Eurocentric. It's something that's like too like high class for like any common person to be in. And I feel like she's really kind of saying no. And again, kind of continuing the torch, because there are a lot of Afro-Caribbean and Afro-Latino, Afro-Hispanic composers. We just don't know their names because we have been told that classical music is like for, more European-centric ears or audiences. And I love how she's changing that up.
I also got to say, Gloria, the description of listening to an orchestra in a rainforest is like such a beautiful description. So thank you for that image, the idea. Like that's entirely exactly what that sound sort of evokes. Let's do another one of your picks. This one is Aún Te Quiero.
Pude jurar que esto era temporal y asumir que volverías a mí. Quiero entender por qué huiste
That's such a big sound, like such a beautiful, gigantic, big sound. For Lido Pimienta's new album, my name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Gloria Malone is here to talk about this new record. Gloria, why'd you pick this song?
Because of that huge sound.
Yeah.
I feel like you really like feel the orchestra in that song. And I also love it because it sounds haunted. It's kind of like a spooky feel to it, which I love.
Yeah.
And then the lyrics of this like spooky song, it's kind of like a woman scorned when you listen to the lyrics, just like I love you, but clearly you are not the one, you were never the one. And like I just gotta keep it moving. And so I just felt like I don't know, I'm like when I was a kid, I always like dream in music videos. And so when I hear this song, it just feels like I don't know, again, a haunted, spooky orchestra in the rainforest of a woman scorned. So I just love the drama of it.
It is very, very dramatic. I mean, like when you think about this album and you think of sort of maybe the trajectory of Lido's entire career, how does the Lido that you're hearing back then sort of square with the Lido that you're hearing now, do you think?
I think it's the playfulness that she explores in her art, right? Like she, from her album Colombiana to composing composing here at the New York City Ballet to Lido TV to her visual art. I just love that she continues to play. And so although it's a departure from like the sound that we're used to, it's the Lido that we're used to of just like expressing herself through art and not necessarily answering to like invisible questions of like, well, you sound this way, you should stay this sound, or you do art this way, you should do art this way forever. And so I think it's a different Lido, but it's the same one that we know who likes to play within art.
Because the expectation that I think we have of Lido at this point is evolution, right? It's sort of this idea of she's just going to go towards the thing that she's most curious about. For people who maybe don't know, Lido TV was like literally a show that that she premiered. I remember that she premiered it at TIFF here in Toronto a few years ago. And is just an artist who's willing to completely and fully explore where she wants to go. She kind of reminds me of like Bjork in that way, in the sense that like the only thing that is constant about Bjork is that it's Bjork, and every album will take you in a different direction. And she'll say, this is who I am this week. This is who I am this month. And like there's an honesty in that. There's sort of an honesty in sort of arriving at the thing that you expect from Bjork. And it's actually not a surprise to me that Lido ended up covering Bjork's, out of all Bjork's songs, she covered the song called Declare Independence. And it's just purely the song would be like, forget everything else you've been told about the expectations that people have of you. Forget that. What is the thing that you want to say? I think they have that a little bit in common. Before I let you go, you've got one more pick for us. This is a song called Buscalaluz. What made you go with this one as a final one?
So it's the final song on the album. And the first time I heard the album, all this straight through, this song like clicked in the story of the album to me. And it's a story of, and I feel like a love letter to the Caribbean and like people of Caribbean descent and Caribbean individuals. And in Busca la Luz, it literally means look for the light. And so she's saying like, look for the light, but then she's also like, you are the light. And because the Caribbean deals with so many things because of the global North, I think it's kind of like a reminder that like the Caribbean is like, we are and is and will continue to be a light in so many different ways. Like the Caribbean deals with hurricanes because of, overconsumption in the global North. It deals with land grabs and all of these things that happen. And so I think it was a nice way to remind us that like we are the light, and that's kind of a love letter. So I loved it.
That's a really beautiful place to leave it. I really appreciate you here, Gloria. Thanks for your time, friend. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course.